Have you ever wondered what is stopping you from getting clients? Chances are you are forgetting your audience. And when you make this big branded mistake, you're going to get crickets, you're not going to get engagement, and chances are you're not generating as much income as you can. So let's talk about it in this video. So I have my notes here with me so I don't miss out anything. And I want to talk first about why you are forgetting your audience. And one of the first things that I've observed, and I've even made this mistake too, is because we are focused too much on ourselves. One of the biggest mistakes you can ever make is thinking about only yourself when building a brand and branding your business, because oftentimes when you're doing that, you're most likely thinking about what I like. I like these colors, I like these fonts, but you're not thinking about your target audience. You're not thinking about their pain points. And I'm going to lead into the other point, which is you don't even know who your audience is. And when you don't know who your audience is, it is highly likely for you to forget your audience. And what do I mean by this? One, you don't know them. You have not probably done any market research. You have come up with this very brilliant idea of this very great business and this brand, and you're building it, but you don't know anything about them. You don't know what makes them come alive. You don't know what evokes a certain emotion. You are just talking. And I have found myself in this position where there was a time when I was getting a lot of crickets. Like, I was posting content, I was talking, I was going on and on, but there's no engagement. Sure, you had persons who were engaging, but those were not my ideal audience. They were not my ideal clients, not ideal audience, but not my ideal clients. And so I was getting the support and the love from friends, but not clients. I wasn't generating any income because I was talking at my audience and not to them. And how I got to know my audience so I could tailor my content and my services and offerings to them was simply getting to know them. And a good way to do that was through market research. So this is another point. Why you're forgetting is your audience, because you haven't done the market research. And so market research can simply be you doing a poll, you doing surveys. So on my Instagram stories, and that's just one of the ways I like engaging my audience these days, is running a poll, not because I just want to get data, but because I genuinely really want to know what's going on. So from time to time, I would be like, hey guys, what are you currently struggling with? What is your biggest challenge with branding? And how I even started this series of videos talking about branding mistakes was because I talked to my audience. I was like, hey guys, what are you struggling with? And some would say engagement, and some would say, boy, not being consistent. They were just talking to me, and because they spoke to me, I was better able to identify the pain points. And not only me talking about the pain points, but also understanding what their desires were. One of the desires of my audience is for them to grow on social media this year, or just to grow in social media and gain visibility. But they don't only want visibility, they want to ensure that when they're creating content, there's some amount of impact, but they're also able to generate revenue. And all of that came through market research. I want to talk about this other thing too. So recently, I have decided to go on this mission of helping 10 service-based women entrepreneurs to grow their brand presence, refine their branding, and grow on social media. And in just talking to the women so far, the conversation is just really raw, honest, and they're not holding back. A lot of them, and they will tell me like, boy, Carey, I'm creating all this content, but I don't feel like anything is working. Or I'm creating these graphics because I don't have the resources, I don't have the budget for hiring a graphic designer. So I want to know how I can better be able to utilize Canva. So in having these conversations, I'm able to, one, identify the challenge, identify the desires, but also come up with a solution that can help them. And the good thing is that I have been where a lot of these women have been, so I'm better able to even craft a solution for them. So those are some ways how, one, not understanding or even forgetting your audience could lead to you not getting enough engagements and getting crickets. So that's one of the things. Another reason or why you forget your audience is because you're failing to adapt. So think about when you started your brand. Probably you started your brand in 2020. That was the height of the pandemic. But have you evolved since 2020? In 2020, people were mostly at home. They were looking for ways to engage themselves, whether through entertainment, whether through learning. But no, they're outside. There, a lot of them are now in that space of being up and about. You have to understand your audience in a way. Has their lifestyle changed? You have to know that as their pain points, are there more things added on in terms of pain points, or have they met some of or achieved some of those desires they once had? So you have to learn how to evolve and also adapt. Another reason why you forget your audience is because you're trying to appeal to everyone. So one of the biggest mistake any entrepreneur can make is saying, I am targeting everybody in a particular niche, or I'm just targeting women, or I'm just targeting women in their 20s. Wrong. I used to make that mistake when I was just starting out in business and understanding business. I was like, I'm targeting all the women in their 20s and their 30s. Listen, there's so many women in their 20s and their 30s. They're very dynamic. So, you could be talking to women in their 20s who are married. You could be talking to women in their 20s who are recently engaged. You could be talking to women in their 20s who are single. Those are unemployed. Those are employed. There's so many facets to, a woman in their 20s. So, when you are building your brand, you have to be very clear about who you're talking to so that you can tailor your content, your services, and your offerings to them. All right. Now we have talked about why we are forgetting our audience. We want to talk about signs you might be forgetting your audience. And I'm just looking at my notes because I don't want to miss anything. So the first one is your messaging is very generic. Now, one of the worst things you can do is have a very generic message that is just like, okay, I can solve all your problems, but are you talking exactly about the problem you're going to solve for them? Can when they read whatever message you have, does it connect with them? Does it evoke an emotion? Maybe, maybe not. And that's how generic, when you have a generic message, that's how you know you're missing the mark. Another struggle is attracting the right clients. No, this is a big challenge for a lot of entrepreneurs because one, they're very passionate. As entrepreneurs, like we're very passionate, we believe in what we're doing, but when you are not attracting the right clients, that's even more stressful. So I recently had a conversation with another entrepreneur who said, boy, Carrie, I run these ads, but I'm telling you, all the people who don't have money are are signing up for this thing. They would reach out, they want to inquire, but when I talk to them, they have no money, which means she's not talking to the right people. Her messaging needs to change, or how she position herself needs to change, and those are just some other things. I'm not saying when you're talking or targeting your ideal audience, you won't get some persons who doesn't fit within that core. But if you realize majority of the people are not your ideal audience or clients, you're missing the mark and you need to work on your messaging. Another thing is your engagement is low. No, social media is a big thing for us. One of the things I personally don't like is always creating content and feel like nothing is moving, or we're not getting the results, we're not getting the engagement. It's just like crickets out here. So, a key indicator that you're forgetting your audience is low engagement or no engagement at all. And engagement is not just about likes, but comments. And even if sometimes persons don't comment, like if they're not getting any emails, any inquiries on your website, those are signs that your engagement is low and you are forgetting your audience. And then another thing is that clients are confused. Now, one of the worst things I think as well is when your clients are confused, when the people you're talking to is confused about what you do, that's a big sign that you're forgetting your audience. So we have touched on why your audience, or why you could be forgetting your audience. We've also talked about some signs you may be forgetting your audience. Now I want to talk about how can we fix this branding mistake. No, first things first, we want to get very clear on who our target audience is. Who is your ideal audience? Who is your ideal client? When you're creating your content, who are you creating that content for? Listen, for me, when I started out, I used to say I'm talking to these set of women, but I have learned to narrow it down to this one specific person. So you're gonna create something called like a client's avatar or a customer avatar, and you're going to get to understand everything about that ideal client. Who is she? How old is she? Where does she live? What's her income? What piques her interest? What's her pain points? What's her desires? How does she think? How does she feel? Where is she at this point in her journey? What services does she need? What kind of solutions does she need? You have to be thinking about all of these things and create that. I've created a branding your business worksheet that can help you with this. So you might already be on your way with building your brand, but sometimes we need to just take a step back to the foundational phases or stages and just get very clear on that. Because if you're not clear on who your audience is, you're going to be like talking to a wall. You're not talking, you're not connecting with anyone. And I have found a difference in my content since I've been very clear about who I'm talking to. It's not just one time and finish, it's a constant work. Because remember, as people, we evolve, and so also your audience will evolve. So if you realize there's a shift, you're creating content and you realize it's not hitting like before, chances are your audience is also evolving or you're missing the mark. So like I always say, branding is fixable, and it's always good to know your client just like you know yourself. And if you know yourself and you know your client and you're creating our content, things get really better for you. Another thing is to use their language. So I recently had a call with a potential client. So she has never worked with me or hired me for any service, but I've just been doing this, I'd call it market research, just to identify why persons follow me on social media, why they engage, what they like about my branding, if there's anything that they would want to see, that kind of thing that would kind of nudge them to spend with me, or what would inspire them to hire me for a particular service to solve their problem. And in talking to this potential client, she was like, Harry, the words you use connect with me. So she would literally, be telling me the words that connect with her. Also, while she was speaking, I was mindful of the word she used. I was like, okay, she's using the word overwhelmed. Is she using busy? Is she using struggling? Is she using perfectionism? Is she using Canva? What are the words she's using, and how does those words connect with her, and what do they really mean for her? So you have to use their language. You have to understand how they're speaking, so that when you're creating your content, when you're creating your messaging, then you're better able to speak and connect with your audience in that way. Another thing is aligning your visuals with your messaging. Now, this is a very big one, because sometimes we create graphics and we like the pretty graphics, but sometimes the pretty graphics does not connect with your ideal audience. So every time you decide to create a content or you're creating content, you also have to assess, does this visual connect with my ideal audience? So if your ideal audience or client's name is Monique, you have to be like, okay, will Monique like this? Will this resonate with Monique? Will this font, placed here, or will this layout resonate with Monique? It is that deep, guys, right? And then another thing is to listen and engage. And how you listen and engage is when you ask questions, it's when you publish your content. How do they respond to it? Do they like it? Do they comment? Do they follow up with a question? And sometimes your content don't take off in the first few days or months of you posting, and sometimes it can feel a bit daunting, but you can repurpose your content, and in repurposing your content, you see how persons respond to it. So for instance, I would do a long form video, but then I repurpose it into a carousel, into a newsletter, and so on and so forth. And then based on how I repurpose the content or the different content formats, I'll realize like, oh, so my audience actually like my YouTube videos, or oh, they actually prefer carousels, or oh, they actually prefer me when I do reels, and they probably prefer when I do voiceovers versus a talking to the camera, or they prefer when I talk to the camera versus voiceovers. So these are the things, or probably they prefer longer form content or shorter form content. All these things is about you creating the content, listening, and making the changes as necessary. And lastly, I want to say you have to test and refine. You have to create the content, you have to be talking, you have to be positioning yourself and putting yourself out there. And like I said, identifying what works and what isn't. So let's do a quick recap. I spoke about why entrepreneurs are forgetting their audience, why you could be forgetting your audience. I talk about the signs, why or the signs that you're forgetting your audience, and lastly, how you can fix this branding mistake. If you want to start making some effort to fixing this branding mistake, you can grab my worksheet, which is the branding your business worksheet, where I give you a breakdown of how you can assess and get clearer on your brand. So I'm talking about from audience to your messaging to your colors to your visuals, everything. And if you feel like, boy, I want to do this part of the work, but I also want a one-on-one support, I also provide brand strategy sessions. So I do brand strategy sessions in addition to me doing brand design sessions as well. So if you feel like, boy, too much crickets in my business and I really want to make some improvement, get some traction, get some engagement, and eventually get clients, then you want to take some actions. If you want anything that I mentioned here, all the link is in the description, and I have some bonus resources that you also want to check out as well.